Good evening. For the last 2 weeks, though I doubt if most of you were aware of it, BSB, or British Satellite Broadcasting, has been transmitting programs on its 5 channels, though only to those whose sets are connected to cable networks. Because of past teething troubles and the lack of receiving dishes or square reels in the shops, their public launch has been postponed until the end of the month. From then on, competition with Sky Television will begin in earnest. So what will BSB's viewers get? Well, first there's the Now channel, which offers such things as current affairs, documentaries, medicine, leisure pursuits, and fashion, and over the weekend becomes BSB's Arts channel. Next, the Galaxy channel, which covers drama, soap operas, children's programs, and general entertainment. Then there's the Power Station channel, which provides rock and pop music for those who like it, and which, says BSB, to disarm criticism, is radio with pictures, not television with music. Fourthly, there's the Sports channel, and lastly, and for a subscription of £10 a month, the Movie channel. Well, I've been looking at some of BSB's offerings over the last 2 weeks, and for those of you who aren't hitched up to cable, here's a preview of a few of them. On the Galaxy channel, I was much entertained by a program with a really novel idea called Kids Court, in which real-life children, as plaintiff and defendant, jury and questioning audience, have their particular problems aired. The moderator is Andrew Connor.
Okay, so Alan, you are the plaintiff or the accuser, and Danny, you're the defendant or the accused. So tell me in your own words, Alan, exactly what happened from the start.
Well, I went off on holiday just for the week.
Right.
So I asked Danny if he would just go in for me.
Into where?
Into the news agent.
The news agent, and take over your paper round, right?
Yeah, which he did, and he will be getting paid out of my own money.
Right, the money that you'd have got paid, he's getting paid,
yeah.
You're doing your job, I see.
Well, when I got back off my holiday, well, I got back on Sunday night, and I went in there first thing, Monday morning. And when I got in there, they told me I had to sack because he didn't do his job properly.
So listen, when they said to you, listen, I'm afraid that because you got your mate and it was hopeless, you got the sack, how did that make you feel?
Well, I felt very angry at the time, because I don't get any pocket money, I have to work for my money.
So that's why you brought him to Kids Court?
Yeah.
All right, okay. Alan, Danny says to you, take over, and you make a mess of it.
Yeah, well, I did make a mess of it because I'm accident prone, you see. Nothing seems to go my way.
For your information, the jury in that case were unable to agree on a verdict. Also on the Galaxy channel was a program called La Triviata, which its makers describe as the essential guide to everything that isn't essential, but which somehow seems curiously compelling. Well, that's a matter of opinion. But one of the wheezes they've dreamed up is to dub fresh commentaries onto old newsreel footage, in this case on a sequence of a 1950s craze called Space Hoppers.
Here's one family who are happy to put a new bounce to their step. Yes, the Schmidt family from Germany prove even Huns can have fun. Hello, Dad's got a puncture, so it's into the local garage for a quick blowjob. Everyone agrees it's green for go with this ozone-friendly transport. Yes, people are certainly going to have to watch out because there's no stopping the hopping when Klaus and his family leave the house. And we can't leave without a hoppy ending, and here it is. I'd like to see Johnny Jerry Traffic Warden clamp that lot.
Another new idea on the Now channel is a parliamentary program called Left, Right and Centre, in which on 4 nights a week a different MP gives his or her view on the goings-on at Westminster. In the first program, it was the turn of the Conservative MP for Richmond, Surrey, who explained why he felt that an MP's life is not a happy one.
Left, right and centre. A war-weary, word-weary Westminster here tonight, poleaxed by the hours, tongue-tied by a parliamentary guillotine, and still hard at it. I'm Jeremy Hanley, MP. 44 years old, I feel older. Married, I feel single. And I have several children at home, I'm told. And I'm getting very tired. It's almost 11:20, and I've been here since breakfast. I'll still be here till most ordinary mortals are well and truly tucked up. Most of us will. Westminster's into one of its all-too-frequent talking marathons. I mean, have a look at this. The civilized world was probably munching muesli. The all-night talkers hadn't noticed sunrise. They'd been on hand for 18 hours or more. Look at the litter, discarded debris of a hard night on the gab. But save the sympathy, though. It's the way we do it.
Another political program on the Now channel is called Now Sir Robin, and features the old warhorse chatting for an hour to 3 fellow journalists about political issues which have disturbed them during the past week. Last week, the journalists were Joe Haynes, Peter Jenkins, and Bruce Anderson. And though some good points were made, a whole hour of it was, in my view, about half an hour too long. I also missed the presence of A, a woman, and B, an audience, at the handling of which Sir Robin is particularly adept. So come back, question time, Mark II, all is forgiven.
Do you lay any of that violence, as Peter Jenkins apparently does, at the door of Margaret Thatcher? In particular, I'll come back to you, Peter, in a moment. And just,
You're
well...
misrepresenting me.
I'm sorry I'm misrepresenting you. You can de-misrepresent yourself in just a second, and I apologise. But you saw the extracts from that tabloid newspaper, Class War, which have been printed, saying horrifying words of gloating over the violence to policemen and the injuries caused to the pigs of the police.
That's
and
right.
Get another brick and throw it where, if you can.
That is a much deeper problem than the one about the poll tax. The poll
Is Mrs.
tax
Thatcher
was the
responsible for that?
Only in that she provided an opportunity, but if it hadn't been for the poll tax, it would have been something else.
Peter,
that's what I'm saying.
How did I misrepresent?
Because I'm not blaming Mrs. Thatcher for the violence. What I said was it was unfair to try and blame it on the Labour Party. And who was it who brought the people onto the streets in the first place? It was Mrs. Thatcher with her poll tax.
Wasn't that blaming Mrs. Thatcher?
And lastly, another contribution from the Galaxy Channel, a quiz show for those with low IQs called Wife of the Week, and presented by Christopher Biggins. In this, 4 couples compete daily to see which will go forward to the final on Friday. The wives are given various tasks, such as to identify their husbands' distorted voices, and to see if the 3 adjectives chosen by the husbands to describe themselves are also the 3 that they would choose. And there's even more.
Hello and welcome back to Wife of the Week. Now, before we start making points in Pop the Question, I thought we'd go down memory lane, have a bit of fun with the girls. I asked the husbands to bring something in with the jog of memory, make them laugh, make them cry, make them blush. So I wonder what Terry's brought in for Alison. What have you got, Terry? Chopstick. A chopstick, a rather nice one, too. So what's the story behind that, Alison?
Well, this just shows how poor we are, really. When we got married 6 months ago, we bought a second-hand washing machine.
Yeah.
And after a few weeks of having it, the door catch broke. So to start the washing machine now, we have to poke a chopstick in to get it started.
Oh, wonderful. So it's a Chinese wash, is it?
Yeah.
Later in the programme, Gilbert Adair will be looking back at 50 years of Hanna-Barbera cartoons, which have produced such golden oldies as Fred Flintstone, Yogi Bear, and Tom and Jerry. But first we're going to discuss 3 of BSB's current offerings: the space soap opera Jupiter Moon, the current affairs magazine programme First Edition, and the comedy show I Love Keith Allen. And here to talk about them are the writer Douglas Adams, creator of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Eve Pollard, editor of The Sunday Mirror, and comedian and scriptwriter Craig Ferguson, soon to launch his own show on ITV. Jupiter Moon, which goes out 3 times a week, is the biggest contract to be awarded to an independent production company since Channel 4's Brookside. And such is BSB's faith in it that 150 episodes are already in production. The location is a European polytechnic housed in a spaceship orbiting one of Jupiter's moons. And the time is New Year's Eve, 2049 AD. Timothy, a first-year student, is showing a new girl, Victoria, around, while 2 other students discuss the electronic news from home.
This is Victoria. I'm showing her around. Hello. Oh, I think you're sharing a room with me and Sarah Robin.
Hey, Timmy, you don't want to show Victoria somewhere else, huh?
Yeah, see you later. Bye-bye, Timmy.
Bye.
That's my sister. She's been going out with him for nearly a year.
What do you mean, going out? I mean, going out where? There's nowhere to go out, is there?
This is going out.
What?
The dome. When you come here, it's called going out. There'll be tears, I expect. Jean-Francois going back to Earth next week.
Oh, I wish I was.
Nothing. Nobody cares. Out of sight, out of mind.
Mine's from Bob.
Good old Bob. Yeah. 3 brothers and a Highland Terrier, and not one of them bothers to say Happy New Year, Hurley.
He's been asked to a party with a girl called Glenda Albright, but he's going to stay in and mug up for his accountancy Part 2 papers.
Good old Bob.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I'm going to dedicate my life to Fimbo Lewis.
Really?
You know, perhaps I'll marry him and become like one of those awful women in Space Wives.
You say something here that's very peculiar. Something really odd.
Douglas Adams, as the creator of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, how did you react to Jupiter Moon?
Well, I think it's one of these things that only seems like a good idea actually at the planning stage. I mean, so obviously somebody had the idea. You know, soap opera is the big thing at the moment. We've had soap operas set in Melbourne and in Liverpool and the East End of London. Where else can we go? Let's put it into space. And the sort of space aspect of it is sort of applied as icing over the top. Now, the thing is, you can't actually apply your location, your fundamental premise, just as icing. So you have sort of absurd things where, just to remind you of where you are, in case you haven't been tipped off by these appalling sets that look as if they would have been rejected by Doctor Who. You know, somebody who says, "I promise I'll be very careful," says, "I'll promise I'll be the most careful man in the universe." And I'm afraid, I mean, the thing is absolutely awful. I mean, it's unbelievably bad. I mean, I sat there sort of cringing horror at what was going on.
Eve Pollard, did you find it bad?
I found it dreadful. It must have been terrific for the do-it-yourself shop that sold them the sets, all painted grey. And, of course, the interesting thing, there's no age. I mean, there's nobody older than 35. So after, you know, 2050, we might as well all give up. And nobody's allowed to be fat. All the girls run around in very sexy cat suits or miniskirts, and they only wear black and white, so obviously colour is being eliminated. It's very, very foolish and very, very dull.
Craig Ferguson, what did you think?
I think it's the daftest thing I've ever seen a camera pointed at in my life, actually. It's really stupid. The idea of there's something really scary that's going around this spaceship called Space Virus, which sounds really imaginative to me, and when people have aspirins, they don't have aspirin. It's not aspirin, it's a little more advanced than that. And it's just really crazy, and the fact that, like he was saying, everyone's really young, and the fact that they have discos in space, which look as embarrassing as discos look now when they're filmed by the BBC. They just look really, really stupid.
Well, now, none of you liked it. I can't say I was crazy about it myself. But the fact of the matter is that people have put a lot of money into it. There are 150 episodes in production. This surely must mean they're not fools, these people. I mean, they're there to make money. This surely must mean that there must be something in it which they think will attract viewers.
Well, they haven't put it in the first programme, have they? Whatever it is.
They're keeping, and also there's no, I mean, there's no Kylie or Jason. I mean, there's no heartthrob that you can see anybody might, you know, get attracted to. And there's nothing even that you could compare your sitting room to, as you might to Neighbours or Coronation Street. I mean, there's no heart in it at all, as far as I can see.
You can't really relate to any of the characters, can you?
No.
I actually cannot envisage how such a thing is actually going to succeed. I mean, the thing is, when you look at something like Neighbours or whatever, then, I mean, however basic the scripts may be, they are actually sustained by a sense of place and the regularity of these people's lives, because it's something we actually know about, and the people making it know something about it.
Yet they exist in a vacuum, these people, don't they?
And because there's no attempt to fill in that vacuum. To write science fiction, you actually have to create a universe, which is very, very difficult to do, and you have to do it very, very carefully, because you don't want to sort of drive it at people. But you have to be very, very clear about what it is.
But nobody's going to be able to pop down to the pub or go to the hospital, because none of these things exist. At least if they are, they're making them up desperately right now, and it's all painted grey.
They might really have had the whole thing on Earth. I mean, there's not much point in having it in a spaceship.
Well, don't you think they just
Well,
thought
you can
there
keep it in
is...
a studio. If you have it on a spaceship, you can keep it in a studio for the entire thing. You don't need to have pubs in. But if they've got so much money, why not go down to the pub and film down there? I really think that it sounds really nasty because you're really getting the boot into their soap opera, but they really should know a bit better than that. I mean, come on.
Don't you think they just thought, where isn't there a soap? And that was the only place so far.
All right, fine. Well, thanks very much. We'll move on now to First Edition, an hour-long daily current affairs program presented by Selina Scott and Peter Smith. Last Thursday's program featured studio interviews on the subject of kidney transplants, another with the businesswoman of the year who runs a multi-million-pound bus company, a chilling piece from New York about a man whose wife was murdered because he tried to get rid of the local drug barons, fashion, film reviews, and a wrong forecast of the winner of the Grand National. And Selina introduced this item about how in these changing times, jobs are changing too.
Now, trawlermen on the northeast coast of the UK are going through a tough time just now. Dozens of boats are up for sale, and 1 in 10 fishermen could soon be out of a job. Some of them have found themselves surprising new careers on land, making cream cakes. Tonight's Sign of the Times looks at the trawlermen who've traded in their fish nets for hairnets.
The fishermen of Bridlington are a hardy breed. The life on the ocean waves always had its ups and downs. But this is one storm they're not prepared to ride out. With the local fleet high and dry, dozens of trawlermen have decided to desert the industry. 50 former fishermen have now landed jobs at this local cake factory, swapping their oilskins for hair nets and protective plastic gloves. The management regard the trawlermen as quite a catch.
We find that they are used to hard work, and so therefore it's quite easy for them to fit in the establishment. Every time we recruit, we seem to take on board another fisherman.
And what does the editor of the Sunday Mirror think of this programme?
I quite like it in a way. I mean, I can see where it's going. I mean, it's very clearly signposted. It's a mix between a magazine and a paper. So you have the sports item at the end, i.e. the back of it, and you have the cover story at the front. And it does do stories from a human sort of side. I mean, the story about the GIs at the front, which was not political at all, but about the Cold War ending and perhaps more Americans going back, and how these British brides are going to have to acclimatise themselves to moving away from Britain.
I thought that was interesting.
Rather nice, and
yeah.
had a certain amount of heart.
Yeah.
The kidney story was quite nice. It was unfortunate, I think, that Selina did the interview in what appeared to be a fairly tidy corner of Luton Airport. But
yes, it was a dreadful set there, wasn't it?
Dreadful.
Yeah.
You can see why Pebble Mill and all those other places that have windows have done it. But it was an interesting aspect. On the day that that doctor had been removed, as it were, and defrocked and struck off the list.
I thought Selina did some very sharp questioning there. I thought,
yes.
I thought.
I think she's a star,
she's
and she
improved
comes over
enormously.
really
yeah.
strongly.
Yes,
It's given her a chance.
Craig, what did you feel about it?
I would agree Selina Scott is a star, but whether or not that gives validity to the news programme, I don't know. I mean, you could have Liz Taylor read the news, it wouldn't make it any better. The thing I thought about it is it reminded me of all these really crappy little things you get in the tabloid newspapers, you know, these tiny little stories, you know, like Badger goes mad in Bridlington and stuff like that, and there's only enough for 5 lines or something, but they make a whole big story out of it. I mean, like they had the story about the GI brides of today, where they had the GI brides and the GIs acting in the programme, this kind of like mock drama documentary, which I thought was sad, although the acting was much better than in Jupiter Moon, it's got to be said. But I thought it was a little bit flippant. I think it's got promise, as you say. It could go on to be like cable network news in America, but I don't think it can aspire much higher than that.
I felt that they called it a new programme, or a new style current affairs programme. It didn't seem to me to be all that different from the old Nationwide.
No, well, I was just about to say, I thought, I mean, I felt watching it, I was actually longing for the great days and majestic achievements of Nationwide. I felt, particularly the thing that Craig just talked about, the GIs. I mean, there's some terrible little sort of home movies. Hello, I'm Pippa, and this is my husband, Al. And Al comes on and says, hello. And it's just sort of embarrassing. Yeah. And then the piece about the trawlermen. There's sort of terrible commentary, I wrote some of it down here, about, you know, the fishermen of Bridlington are a hardy breed, a life on the ocean wave has always had its ups and downs, and they decided to desert to the industry. I mean, just these sort of appalling puns which seem to be, you know, a substitute for any serious way of dealing with this issue. And it was actually quite an interesting story, but it's given this sort of terrible sort of down market.
And tell me something I didn't understand. That before we got into that issue, we saw a picture of a dog peeping out from the legs of some girls. I didn't understand what the object of that was.
I think they were showgirls of the 50s, and it was a sort of signpost, sign of the times, i.e. signs that things are changing.
I thought it was a badger going mad.
May I say, some of those fillers, as they're known in newspapers, are some of the most successful, and you get most letters about them. I think we're being very sophisticated here. I mean, for example, magazines, and more magazines being read than ever before, are supposed to teach you something. I mean, I thought one of the most interesting things was Anne Globe, who's the Businesswoman of the Year, who they asked her how she coped with men, and she said, I've been a nurse. I mean, after that, she'd obviously got no trouble. I thought that was quite interesting. I think we're being highly sophisticated. Those triumph over tragedy stories and the human side of news stories, I think, are not being done on TV now.
I didn't find the Anglo interview very interesting. I wanted to know more about how it had come about, you know, how she got the money and the balancing the books.
I was a wee bit concerned about that particular interview because it was treating this woman who was Businesswoman of the Year as kind of like an Oscar winner. Now, I don't know if anybody else has, but I've travelled on a stagecoach, right? And the reason people travel on stagecoach buses is because they're skint and they can't travel any other way. And that's why it's so successful. It's a cheap form of transport. But it wasn't kind of looked into that. The business side of things wasn't looked into.
Great. Well, we'll go on lastly to the comedy show I Love Keith Allen, in which he appears in a huge variety of guises. A dancer, a BSB continuity man called Paulo Webster, as the interviewer of Norris McWhirter, chairman of the Freedom Association, as Jerry Arkwright, leader of the Northern Industrial Gays, and as both commentator and participant in a pro-celebrity boxing match. Here he is as the actor Kenneth Branagh, fighting his opponent Kirkland Lang, not with gloves, but with martial speeches from Shakespeare.
Some last-minute touches from Emma Thompson there.
Round one.
Second step out of the ring. And Lang, Brannah's miming. He's gone for the horse. It looks like a horse. I think it's Henry V.
Forward onto the breach.
Yeah, it's Henry V.
Or close the wall up with our English dead. In times of peace, nothing so becomes a man as modest humility and stillness. But when the blast of war blows in our ears, then
controversy here. Lang stopped. I don't know what's happened. The referee sent him to a neutral corner.
You're shouting, Branagh. Next time it'll be a public warning. No shouting. Project. Use the diaphragm. Right, box off.
Surely no. This is incredible. Shouting warning. Branagh going in. Branagh going back to the mime.
Disguise fair nature with hard
Stay with Henry V
From the
here.
stomach, Kempron. Remember your training.
Let it pry through the portage at the head like the brass cannon.
Patronise him, Ken. Ethnic minorities. Bit of help there from Ben Elton.
Love it. As fearfully as the gold rock, O'Hag and Jutty, his confounded base, swilled with the wild and wasteful ocean.
Come along, Kenneth, hit him with a right. Thatcher's been doing it for years.
Craig Ferguson, what does one funny man think about another?
It's a wee bit tricky for me, this one. It's a wee bit tricky to be objective about someone else's work when you're so involved in the same kind of thing. I only know Keith Allen before this as an actor. I've never seen him do stand-up, and I think he's a great actor. That clip that was shown, the one of the boxing match, pro-celebrity boxing, was the best thing in the programme, I thought. It was really funny. There were a few things. I mean, with comedy, it's a difficult thing. When you meet a comedian for the first time, you have to get used to their sense of humour. You have to get used to the way they think. So I think I would watch it again. I wouldn't buy a square reel to see it, but I'd watch it again and like to see how it continued. There was one thing in it which I objected to very strongly, and that was the interview with Norris McWhirter, when he was interviewed, and obviously they had dubbed on facts about Norris McWhirter, which they hadn't confronted him about during the interview. And I thought that was, A, it's a one-off because no one else will ever give you an interview, and B, it's not fair to the person. You might not agree with Norris McWhirter, and I don't agree with Norris McWhirter, but he should have a chance to say, you know, to defend himself.
In fact, they removed it from the second edition of the
Didn't
programme.
have much to do with comedy either, I thought.
No, it didn't. No, I agree with that. But I'm interested that you say that you thought the boxing thing was the best thing in the programme. I don't know what you thought, Douglas, I thought it went on too long.
I thought it went on a lot too long, and I've actually seen that sketch done better before by the Pythons, where they did it very, very briefly and much more funnily. And also I've seen it done on Saturday Night Live in America. And it did just go, it never actually homed in on precisely what its joke was. When Python did it, it was very, very clear. And it just, you know, went on hoping to sort of gather some more laughs into its fold as it went along, but never quite certain what it was going for.
Which of the roles did you think really succeeded?
Well, I suppose the Kenneth Branagh one comes quite close. I don't know. A lot of them I just felt was sort of very edgy. I mean, the Paulo, the continuity announcer. I couldn't quite see what he was doing there. I thought, I suppose, the Northern Industrial
link, wasn't he, between the various items? I thought when he was being the sports commentator, I mean, that was quite a good takeoff of your actual boxing ring sports commentator. I mean, it was good in that way. It was a good send-up.
Yes. One of the things I think annoyed me was the sense that unless you're, it kind of it attempts to disarm you by saying, you know, if you disagree, you know, if you don't enjoy this, it means you're not right on enough. And I think you actually have to say, is that good enough?
Eve, what did you think?
Well, he undressed more than most comedians I've ever seen, more bare flesh, and he's probably quite an engaging chap, but I just didn't think he was very funny. I mean, I agree that the boxing thing was the best thing, but that was all right for 2 minutes. I think the McWhirter thing was just a cowardly way of trying to get an interview. But I also thought that it was it just took all those sort of obvious attitudes of being, this is trendy and this is now, but it wasn't funny at all. And also he obviously couldn't resist putting himself off camera. I'm sure they could have got a link man to come and do the little things he was doing.
Yes.
He'd have been better off with someone else being in it.
Yes.
I think.
I would have said that, in fact, I mean, I noticed in the credits that Keith Allen wrote and performed in the programme, obviously, but it was all written by him. And I think what he would have benefited from greatly is a script editor, someone who would actually say, no, this has actually gone too long, and we're going to stop it there. You don't have to have, you know, Barry Cryer come in and go, oh, right, go back to reveal no trousers. But at the same time, there is a time, I think, when one person writes a show, that it really is a good idea to have someone else come in and say, no, no, you're going too far there.
Well, now I'm going to ask you all a more general question, which is this. In your view, is there going to be room for 2 satellite stations in this country? Or perhaps is there even going to be room for 1? What do you all think?
I think there is. I think that deregulation will mean that you can get programmes on at night and you don't have the choice, as you often do, of snooker, bowling and snooker, which for women is not particularly exciting. I think that there will be, I think it will be a nightmare for them both, probably, between now and any profits to be made. But I think we do want choice. They're just going to have more, they just need more people to help them.
It has been said that, unlike America, where there are thousands of stations, in this country we've got 4 channels, we've got video, which is a very big business in this thing, and people are watching less television than they used to, by about 8 minutes this year over last year. Do they really want something else, and are they really prepared to pay for it?
Well, I'm reminded of what's happening with Sunday newspapers at the moment, because I've noticed that the more Sunday newspapers there are, not only does the amount you read of each of them therefore sink proportionally, but the total amount you read altogether sinks absolutely, which is something I'm hard put to explain. But I find the more and more television there is to see, the less television altogether I actually watch.
That's right.
I mean, I would think that when we're talking about 2 satellite companies coming in, and you're talking about snooker, bowling and snooker, the people that are going to buy satellite dishes, I would think, are the people that want snooker, bowling and snooker. So if Sky and BSB take the snooker, bowling and snooker, fantastic, then I don't have to buy a square reel or a dish or anything. They can have it all.
I think if it's true, if they're all going to like snooker, bowling and snooker, I think that would be a great pity. Maybe there's only room for 1. Maybe they'll have to do the unthinkable and combine. But I think we do need more choice.
From what you've seen so far, which of these 2 do you think is going to survive?
Between Sky and BSB? Yeah. I've not seen Sky.
No.
But BSB I would have
I think
thought.
Sky News is brilliant.
Yes.
And if you're a journalist, it's
and this has
marvellous.
practically no news. It has 2 or 3 minutes on all the channels, but that's all.
I think to be said in the favour of BSB, they do actually make their own programmes as well, I believe, is much more so than Sky, which I think might be a mistake, but it certainly seems a more adventurous way to approach things. And I would give them my vote just for that, just for making programmes, which has got to be